And so they've now announced yesterday they're opting out of their CBA. Now there could be a potential work stop. The CBA will expire next October.
The players and the league are now on the clock to negotiate a new CBA by the end of the 2025 season. And y'all, the timing of this decision is truly huge.
The WNBA is coming off of their most viewed season in league history, and the future of women's basketball is looking brighter than ever. However, there might not even be women's basketball after next year. And there's only one thing that can prevent that from happening. Right after a historic WNBA finals, the Women's National Basketball Players Association decided to take an early look toward the future, choosing to opt out of the collective bargaining agreement that was signed in 2020 in hopes to significantly raise salaries for players. And if that doesn't happen, we might not see WNBA basketball for a while. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications. And now that we get all that out of the way, do the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? In 2020, the Women's National Basketball Players Association reached a deal with the WNBA on a new CBA, which means players would be able to make much more money than they had before. And for the first 5 years, it worked like a charm. The highest salary in 2019, which was the year before the CBA was signed, was being earned by Dewana Boner of the Phoenix Mercury, who was making a little over $127,000 per year. This year, the three highest earning players, Arike Agunboale, Jewel Lloyd, and Kalia Cooper, all made $242,000, which is almost double the amount of the highest salary in 2019. Players have been making more than ever, but after a season in which the WNBA saw a 115% spike in viewership, which is a lot by the way, those same players want even more money. The problem with that though is that despite the massive increase in ratings, the WNBA still lost around $40 million this year. So if the players want a pay increase, they're going to have to find a way to be profitable.
But the WNBA Players Association, well, they think they're worth more, and good for them. God bless them. I hope they are. They should get every dime that they deserve. But I also think that they should pay back the money lost.
We dominated opening night on Prize Picks, hitting on the Anthony Edwards free square and making an easy $75, and then making another $150 on my Hauser LeBron James picks. We had a lot of NFL success as well, all in all making about $400 over the past week. Now, if you haven't signed up for Prize Picks, make sure you use my promo code microphone to get a free $50 when you make an entry of $5 or more. I give away my picks for free on Instagram at TheFlightMike or Snapchat at FlightMikeSnap, and thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Now, what's so crazy about this negative profit margin is that the WNBA generated double the revenue this year as they did in 2019, bringing in a whopping $200 million compared to the $100 million they generated 5 years ago. So you might be wondering, how on earth did the WNBA double their revenue, yet still somehow found a way to lose money? Well, do you remember how earlier on in the WNBA season, we were discussing how they decided to charter flights all of a sudden? That's just one of the examples of ways that the WNBA reinvested additional money into their product. They just put too much money toward their product in order for them to see any profit. Now, I want to mention that this isn't the worst thing in the world. More eyes are on women's basketball than ever before, so the WNBA stock will continue to skyrocket, but as of right now, they're losing money, and they're actually costing the NBA money. Now, I'm not sure how many of you know this, but the NBA actually owns 50% of the WNBA, and they've poured hundreds of million dollars into the league since its inauguration in 1996, including $15 million in 2024. Some WNBA teams are even owned by their NBA counterpart. So what this means is that the NBA is and always has been heavily invested in their women's counterpart, but the money that Adam Silver and the NBA are putting into the WNBA has not brought them any revenue in return. But hey, it's not like they really need it. The NBA made $13 billion this year, which is 65 times times the amount that the WNBA brought in. They're doing just fine. The WNBA, on the other hand, is about to go on hiatus if they don't find out how to please their players, all while simultaneously figuring out a way to actually make money. Lucky for them, there's actually an easy fix. All the WNBA needs to do is just copy the NBA.
And in the NBA, they have percentages of revenue shared for the players, right? So jersey sales, obviously their TV contracts. You see these every year, these contracts get bigger and bigger and bigger, right?
Yeah, massive.
But that's because their CBA, it negotiates where the, if the owners are making certain types of money, they get that as well.
Got it.
In the WNBA, that's not the case.
Kelsey Plum, who is the vice president of the Women's Players Association, by the way, put it perfectly. The NBA and NBAPA have their own collective bargaining agreement, which details that 50% of the revenue that the NBA brings in gets given to the players. The most recent CBA that the NBA and NBAPA agreed on was signed in 2023, meaning that the salary cap is increased due to league revenue getting higher and higher every year, and this has worked wonders for the NBA, and players are getting paid more than ever, with the average NBA salary now being around $12 million. Now, when it comes to the WNBA and their collective bargaining agreement, the WNBA only agreed to give the players around 10% of the league's revenue, with the exact number in 2024 being 9.3%, making the average WNBA salary this year around $119,000, 1% of what NBA players make. But that's the thing, WNBA players don't want NBA money, they want to make the same percentage of their league's revenue as NBA players. They don't want tens of millions of dollars, they know that the revenue that the WNBA brings in wouldn't allow that to happen. But if the WNBA and the Players Association were to agree on a 50% revenue share like the NBA has in a new CBA, the average WNBA salary would be around $700,000, with the top players making around $2 million per year, not 45. That's all they want. Angel Reese even went out and said that her WNBA salary, which is less than $75,000 per year, doesn't even pay her rent for the year. Now, Angel Reese makes a ton of money off of sponsorships, and her rent is definitely higher than average, but Reese is among the more popular players in the entire league. Imagine how little this salary feels to somebody who doesn't have the popularity that Angel Reese does. Still, the problem with this proposal, and the reason that this isn't already the standard, is the fact that the WNBA would realistically have less money to operate, and they'd be losing even more money than the $40 million I talked about before. But with the league on the trajectory that it is, that money will come.
Which is fine, it's an uphill battle, like I said, but I guarantee you, as it continues to progress, things will change.
Viewership numbers are at an all-time high, attendance numbers are at an all-time high, and merchandise sales were up a ridiculous 76% in 2024. There isn't a scenario where these numbers take a hit with how popular the league has become. And if we're being honest, the WNBA fully has Caitlin Clark to thank for that. Her popularity and dominance alone sent the WNBA to a completely different stratosphere, even having similar viewership ratings to the NBA during the regular season. But all that growth is just the beginning. New players are starting to take over the league. The rise of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese will absolutely be one to watch. And most importantly, the WNBA is scheduled to expand in 2025, with the Golden State Valkyries being the newest WNBA franchise and the first to join since the Atlanta Dream in 2008, with the expansion draft scheduled to be held later this year on December 6th. Not only is the WNBA expanding to Golden State, but they're also putting franchises in both Toronto and Portland, giving the WNBA 15 teams by 2026 compared to the 12 they had for 16 years. Plus, there are plans to add one more team in a big market like Philadelphia or Boston by 2028 to make it an even 16.
Our plan and goal is to get to 16 teams in the next few years.
This is a perfect recipe for revenue. More teams equal more games, and more games equal more money. It's as simple as that. WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert has already announced that the WNBA will be expanding the finals to a 7-game series, and the 2025 season will likely be expanded from 40 games to 44 games, with the addition of the Valkyries. The future of the WNBA is brighter than it's ever been, and in turn, they'll make more money each and every year. But the league needs to make sure they even have the opportunity to keep growing, because they might completely lose their players. Kelsey Plum, who seems to be the voice of this entire operation, made it very clear what the WNBA's priority should be, saying expansion is important important. I understand growing the league. I don't think that it should take precedence over charter flights, over salary, benefits. I think if you were to poll the players right now and ask if they would rather have expansion or charter, I think it's a pretty clear consensus across the board. Expansion will bring in more money, but they need to make the players happy with the money they already have if they want to see this through. If they don't reach an agreement with the Players Association, there will be a lockout, and that's the last thing the WNBA wants right now. So they better make this happen. The NBA and their Players Association were in a similar scenario in 2011, ultimately leading to a lockout that took away the first 2 months of the season. The NBA was seeing their ratings increase each and every year, and the players felt like they deserved more money than they were making. The NBA didn't agree, so the players held out, pretty much preventing the league from doing anything, and it didn't seem like there was an end in sight.
There's a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo that goes into the equation, but at the end of the day, they're approximately $7.5 to $8 billion apart in terms of what both sides believe should be the end result of an agreement.
That is until the NBA and Players Association agreed on a new CBA on November 26th. Still, the NBA had to run through things like free agency and training camp, so the season didn't actually start until Christmas Day, a full month later than the actual agreement was in place. As a result of this, the NBA saw its first yearly decrease in revenue since the 90s, and they're lucky it didn't decrease more. The only reason that their revenue only decreased by $300 million is because LeBron James and the Miami Heat were on their way to win their first NBA championship, and that alone drew plenty of eyes. They only hit a decrease in value once since. It was because of a global pandemic where every professional sports league hit a decrease in revenue. This right here is perfect proof that the WNBA cannot let a lockout happen. They're already losing money each and every year. They can't afford to lose any potential revenue, especially not in a year where they'd be getting 2 new expansion teams. But let's just look at what women's basketball could hypothetically look like without the WNBA. College basketball, especially in March, would be the only way to watch nationally televised women's basketball. The only way for us to watch the top players in the league today would be during the Olympics, and surely before long, somebody would start a rival company that would match the players' demands, doing what the WNBA couldn't. Maybe they'd even call it the WABA, but of course this is all a long shot. A reality where the league and the players don't come to an agreement is highly unlikely. They might have a short lockout like the men did in 2011, but that's the worst it'll ever get. Players know that they deserve more money, but they're also basketball players at the end of the day. Their full-time job is playing basketball. They don't want to miss any opportunity to play the sport they love, and the WNBA knows that. They also know that if these players don't play, they lose more money than they ever had before. So it's very likely that these two find some sort of middle ground. Players might not jump from 10% revenue share to 50 like they want, but they'll see a pretty significant increase nonetheless, and everybody will end this dispute in a good place.